Well, here on Veterans Radio, we're really all about telling veteran stories, sort of getting that word out, helping folks understand, what veterans go through in the military, how everybody's got their own story, and there are lessons to learn from every one of these stories. And I think as the host of this series for PBS, American Veteran, you've done a great job, and they've done a great job putting this together. I commend you. But before I let you kind of sneak your way out of here, because I wanted to make fun about a Marine who thinks he can write. It's one thing to write about real life experiences that you have, the nonfiction world, but you've written your first novel.
Yes, I have.
So tell us a little bit about the creative juices that had you write Missionaries, which was just released about a year ago, I guess, and did real well and is doing real well. Tell us about it.
Yeah, so my first book was a book of short stories about Iraq. It was called Redeployment, and it was 12 different characters all in Iraq, and I've been thinking and writing about American wars for a long time now. And I write a lot of essays and things like that. And the more that I thought about these things, the more it seemed insufficient to just talk about one war, right? So, and to give you an example why, there's a scene in the book late in the book where I have a Colombian mercenary who's looking through the optics of a Chinese-made drone, which is communicating over sort of Swedish telecommunications infrastructure to an Emirati pilot who's about to drop an American bomb on a Yemeni tribesman, right?
This doesn't sound like fiction at this point. That's just about reality.
Well, yeah, that is reality. And, when you look at something like that, right, it becomes clear that you can't just talk about one conflict, right? And if you're trying to talk about how we wage war now and the ways in which, we're sort of reshaping the world through that violence, right? And so I decided I was going to create a novel where I have sort of different characters who start out in different theaters of conflict. So, you meet one person in Afghanistan, you meet one person in Iraq, and you meet two other characters in Colombia, which a lot of people don't know has been the largest recipient of military aid in the Western Hemisphere since the end of the Clinton administration, right? And the other thing that a lot of people don't know about Colombia is that we keep sort of exporting lessons learned or from Colombia to other conflicts that it's seen as a sort of success case. So every ambassador to Colombia post 9/11 has gone on to work in the war on terror in some regard. Two of our ambassadors to Colombia, their next posting was to be the ambassador to Afghanistan. One of them later said there was no place in the world we had more going on than Colombia, including Afghanistan. And so what ends up happening in the novel is these sort of four characters, their sort of fates become entwined because of a military strike in a very poor region of Colombia on the border with Venezuela. And so I wanted to sort of show sort of at various different levels of the conflict, the ways that we wage war now. So, one of the characters kind of lives in this village, and sort of when violence happens, he experiences it as somebody who has to navigate the new sort of social and political landscape in the wake of violence. I have a Colombian military officer. I have a American special forces guy who is sort of at odds with the ways that the mission of special forces has changed over the course of the war on terror. This is sort of a debate that's happened within the SF community. And then you have an American journalist who's kind of trying to make sense of it all. And yeah, so that was sort of the idea behind the novel.
Well, it sounds fascinating. I haven't read it. I will. We want to encourage our Veteran Radio listeners to pick it up and look at it. I think they'll find it. It's got all the elements, both fact and fiction, that I think will make it a quick and enjoyable read. But one more thing I want to ask you about. Yep. You wrote on this in the New Yorker a little bit a couple of months back after the pullout of Afghanistan, the American pullout of Afghanistan. Give us your view on what the conclusion of this 20-year war kind of means locally in Afghanistan and more globally to the United States.
Listen to this full episode and more on the Apple Podcasts app, Blog Talk Radio, Google Podcasts, or iHeartRadio. And now streaming on Amazon Music, Audible, and Spotify.